Hey everybody, movie reviewer next door here, and this is going to be a little bit of a hard one to talk about. In that, there's definitely going to be spoilers, and I might get a little teary talking about it because of the subject and how intimately aware I am of said subject. But I didn't hate this movie. I, I, I actually don't really like. I guess I can understand to an extent how someone cannot like this movie or find it offensive. But I think in order to talk about this subject, you're going to have to take a few risks. So there's inevitably going to be someone, or a lot of people for that matter, who don't like this film. And I can get that. The ending of this film might not be your cup of tea. The text at the end might seem like cleanup duty for them picking the wrong ending. And I'm going to talk about the ending because apparently a lot of different people have had different opinions on it. And this is one time where I think the kind of open ending works because yes, I'm tired of every horror. Seemingly every horror movie that gets any talk nowadays is based on grief or it's something like Terrifier that's super gory. I loved Hereditary. I did. The ending, if I go back and watch it again, I probably wouldn't be as big on the ending because so many A24 horror movies do that exact same type of thing. Talk to Me as well, also being kind of a grief-based horror movie. Smile, Smile 2, which I hated Smile and Smile 2. Everybody saw it. If you want to know why, go to my videos. I'm sorry it's been such a long intro, but excuse me. But this film is The Woman in the Yard. It's from 2025. It's a horror film directed by Jaume Collet-Serra, and it stars Danielle Deadwyler, Okui Okpokwasili. I might have gotten that wrong, sorry. Peyton Jackson, Estella Kahija, and Russell Hornsby. In this film, in the aftermath of her husband's death, widow Ramona struggled to raise her two kids as hindered by the arrival of a mysterious woman with supernatural abilities. So, what did I think of The Woman in the Yard? Well, as somebody who is definitely going through, I guess, pre-mortem grief is what you could call it, or depression, whatever. I did like this film. Do I have my problems with it? Yes, but I did really like this. It this doesn't feel like your garden variety like race baity nonsense where it doesn't feel like, at least to some people, doesn't feel like actual human emotions are being portrayed. It feels like it's being used as a way to make a film feel more important than it actually is, or make it feel more like art or whatever. Like films like The Hate You Give, where I'm sorry, but I don't feel like the people who made The Hate You Give, I think it was George Tillman Jr. I can't remember the director's name at the moment. I don't believe that film was made for any other reason other than to, you know, give more of a boost to. I forgot if BLM existed before The Hate You Give, but it it either helped create it as a concept or gave it a boost and more people knew about it after the movie. I think the film is terrible. I don't like how it tries to turn real world events into something that gives people a reason to be violent because I don't think violence is the answer for a lot of these things. Uh, Like, yes, if somebody breaks into my house, I'm gonna shoot them because they could be here to harm me or my family. That's just normal. Eh, Going into a violent riot because of real world problems, I don't think solves anything. Pushing back on it, yes. Taking action and going to town hall meetings, whatever, peacefully protesting without destroying property, destroying businesses, especially what happened in the Summer of Love, destroying black owned businesses, and then the response to people being like, my livelihood's gone is, oh, just get insurance. When these people probably didn't have riders and insurance, it's very fucking expensive. But, anyways, in that way, I don't feel like that film has any reason to exist other than to be propaganda. For this film, and for a lot of horror films, because there's a lot of horror films that touch upon issues of race, suicide, grief, uh, anxiety, like many things have, there are many horror movies that have been made about these things. And just movies in general. There's even action movies that have a lot of racial issues thrown in, and it seemingly for no good reason. Like the Shaft remake with Samuel L. Jackson. I'm sorry, this video is going to be long. I'm rambling like shit. I'll put a time stamp for when I actually start talking about the movie, but I just have to get this out. The one of the big reasons I didn't love the Shaft remake is because of how it treated the subject of racism. Because it went to just the most cartoonish representation of a racist person with Christian Bale, and I know Christian Bale can do better. The same fucking year he did fucking American Psycho. He's fantastic in that. I agree with the consensus on that film. I love it. But him in that film, the way he's directed feels so phony, especially coming from the director who has done like movies about the hood, very well regarded movies about the hood. I have to look it back up because I forget which ones. I get them mixed up. John Singleton, because I get Menace to Society and Boys in the Hood mixed up a lot of the time. It's not just a me thing. He did Boys in the Hood. He did Poetic Justice. He did Baby Boy, Higher Learning, Rosewood. He's done a lot of films on race. And I don't remember any of those films having as fucked up of racial politics as the Shaft remake. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't hate the Shaft remake or sequel, whatever, because the actual Shaft actor is in it as well. But I think as that is a big part of the Shaft series is talking about race, especially the first one, which I didn't like how it was tackled in the first one either. But then again, that film has the excuse of it being very early on, very low budget, maybe not able to afford the best writers. The Shaft remake was a big budget remake, at least a lot bigger budget. So there's no real excuse there. But the difference between films like that and The Woman in the Yard, I think, is that The Woman in the Yard feels very. eh, The film feels very honest in its depiction of suicidal tendencies, of, just in its depiction of grief and how that can affect families, especially losing a father like these kids have. And at least I hope to shed my perspective on it as somebody who does currently suffer from anxiety. I'm currently on medication for anxiety. I I currently suffer from depression. I'm definitely a very lonely person. I haven't been in a relationship in a while, and that's fine. Um but yeah, with that out of the way. Sorry about that. Um, the cast. Danielle Deadweiler plays Ramona. She's a mother. She just got in this horrible car accident involving her and her husband, and the husband is dead now. Danielle Deadweiler, I don't know a ton about this actress. All I know is that the last thing I saw her in was Carry On with Taron Egerton, with Jason Bateman, uh, Sophia Carson, and Thea Rossi. I thought she was decent in that. I think she's fantastic here. I think she really sells the emotions of what she is going through as a character because I've been in the situation. Not exactly um not exactly in the way of a car crash, but I something a lot of people don't know about me, it's I won't go into too much detail. I lost my dad at the age of 11 when a nurse who we found out later was underqualified. We took the hospital to court, and well, I mean, we got a little bit of a settlement, but that's not going to bring him back, of course. And my mom has had to try to keep us together through all of this just heartbreak and everything. And I think I think that they did a really good job of selling that this character's pain, knowing that she is at least semi-responsible for her husband's death in the way that while they were driving, she has this kind of figure that's haunting her. So it's not exactly her fault. It's hard to say because the implication, I already said spoiler, the implication is that the woman in the yard is her grief, and it's trying to give her reasons to go through with committing suicide, which I think in a lesser film with a lesser director could have been really badly botched. But in this film, I didn't feel that way. It felt genuine. It didn't feel like they were trying to make a mockery of suicide or depression or anxiety. It felt real. I, and again, I'll get to things I didn't like in the film by the end, but, and I do want to discuss the ending because it's something that a lot of people seem to have different sides on. But Danielle Deadweiler really does sell this as a parent trying to be there for her kids. She clearly loves her kids. Very clearly. She's going through a lot of pain. And I think that does come across in the performance for sure. And I yeah, I think she did a great job for sure. Um Akui Akpakwasili plays the woman. I thought she was relatively terrifying. And keep in mind, this is a PG-13 horror film, and I don't think it needed to be R because this subject matter, I don't again, I don't believe every horror film needs to be R. Plenty of horror films I loved have been PG-13. Um like The Ring, the American version of The Ring. Still a terrifying, very creepy, chilling horror movie without having to rely on gore. The Others with Nicole Kidman, which I think was a Spanish film, or at least a Spanish director. I think Guillermo del Toro also executive produced that. I think that film is terrifying as well. Low use of jump scares when they're used, very effective, very creepy tone. I do think you can make a very intense horror film with a PG-13. And this villain, which she is, she's the villain. It's not like I kind of tried to guess what was going to happen, but it's not what I thought, and I'll explain what I thought was going to happen and why I even watched this film. But Akui Akpakwasili does a very good job of being terrifying. She's very like she's kind of an odd looking actress, and I think that kind of adds to the ethereal feel they're going for here, where she's kind of like a spirit or she's a demon trying to get our main character to commit suicide. So I think the casting here, great job. Um, Peyton Jackson plays Taylor. He is the oldest son, our oldest kid. I think he does a fine job. I didn't have much of an issue with them trying to play him as a little bit petulant. Like, petulant kids exist. I don't think that automatically makes a child performance bad, but I do think he did a good job in the film. Estella Kahija plays Annie. She's the daughter. She's fine. Not a lot to go on. There were some points where I thought she could have looked a bit more scared, but then again, it's sometimes you can only do so much in terms of acting with children. And Russell Hornsby plays David, her husband, who we only see in flashbacks, but I like Russell Hornsby. I've seen him in plenty of films. Funnily enough, the last movie I remember, oh yeah, he was in The Hate You Give. I forgot he was even in that. The last film I saw him in was Last Seen Alive with Gerard Butler, which is possibly the most middle of the road Gerard Butler movie that ever existed. Like I randomly watched it on Netflix with my mom and I was like, this is like not terrible, but it's also not great. Like it's just very lumbering. It's just kind of there. It's like a worse version of Breakdown or The Vanishing with Jeff Bridges, Kiefer Sutherland. And here's the thing. This film, it's a very similar setup we've seen many times before. A family is in this house, some grief has struck them, and they see somebody outside. Well, I mean, the being stuck in the house thing is a common horror trope, as is grief. And this one touches on many subjects. It touches on grief. It touches on suicidal tendencies. It touches on anxiety and guilt. And I think it touches on them well. I think it works. And as a horror film, I do think this film is very terrifying. This film did scare me, and it got a lot of emotions out of me. That's usually my tell. If a horror film has me so scared that it gets this kind of response out of me, then I find it very hard to ignore. And this is kind of a once in a lifetime or once in a blue moon type of movie where yes, again, I can understand people being offended by this. I can understand people not liking it. I can definitely understand people not liking the ending. But I think that's the point. I think the point of the ending is that sometimes bad things happen. And the director, Hame Kalatsara, this isn't his first time experimenting with an ending like this. Though not explicit in any of his films, I don't think. Orphan has an alternate ending that is very bleak. Very, very bleak. Because the original ending is a lot more bittersweet, kind of triumphant, and kind of clean cut, while the other ending that they didn't go with is more downer, more sequel baity, I guess. So good on him for not going for a sequel bait ending, because that would have been really dumb. Especially if that ending had happened, it would have been there would have been so many plot holes just left hanging. But how may I call it, Sarah? It hasn't been long since I've talked about him because again, I watched Carry On very recently. Of his films, I've seen Unknown with Liam Neeson, which I think is a great thriller. I'd have to watch it again. The Commuter, also great. Nonstop, great. All three great Liam Neeson films. I haven't seen The Shallows. I've heard it's great. House of Wax, very fun horror remake from Dark Castle as well. Orphan is also a Dark Castle. Um, Maybe Unknown. I think Unknown is also Dark Castle. I have to check here. Yeah, Dark Castle Entertainment is one of the studios. Yeah. So I do very much respect How I Call It Sarah as a director, and as long as he never does another film like Jungle Cruise or Black Adam ever again, mainly just movies with Dwayne Johnson, just don't do big budget Hollywood movies. Please stick to these. Please stick to these indie thrillers and even the bigger budget thrillers with Liam Neeson. That's fine. But I do think he has a lot of talent to be able to turn this one house into a into the setting for an hour and a half movie. And this movie doesn't quite hit an hour and a half. Without credits, it's about an hour and 20 minutes, which I think is perfect length for a film that takes place all in one house. And even though one of my issues with this film is kind of pacing wise, I don't have many because this film did really grip me and made me want to know what was going on next. So, the reason I even watched this film is a friend of mine in a Discord server was watching it with a friend. They just randomly turned it on. I wasn't watching it because I didn't really feel like watching a movie at that point. And they apparently really didn't like it. One of them said 3 out of 10, one of them said 4 out of 10. That's fine. But from what I heard them say, they didn't like spoil the ending to me, which I'm glad for that. But from what they said, I had a very different experience to them, of course. Um, and I'm always willing to hear out people if they have if they have a different opinion, talk about it in the comments. I'm always down to talk about that. That's great. It makes me happy to know that people actually watch me. But yeah, like I don't really know exactly what I can talk about in this film other than the ending in terms of most of this film is kind of if I'm being honest, it is kind of generic in ways, but it's the way it does these things that makes it a little special to me. Because this film does kind of do the psychological thriller thing of um, showing you things that you don't know if they're real, you don't know if they're fake, but it does them in a way where it's kind of easy to tell and you don't feel cheated. At least I did. Because I felt incredibly cheated by a lot of films that try to do the Jacob's Ladder thing, which is kind of what this film does. So, in order to talk about it further, I kind of have to talk about the ending. Again, spoilers, you've been warned. At the end of this film, our main character is in a bedroom talking to the woman in the yard. She tells her kids to go outside she's talking to her and talking about that you prayed every day for me to come here. And she says, I prayed for strength. And she says, no, you didn't. You prayed for, you didn't pray for the strength to go on. That's what it was. She didn't pray for the strength to go on. She prayed for the strength to end it all. And it's made very apparent that our main character didn't didn't feel 100% like she's been ready. She's been in a way. She's been thinking about ending it all multiple times, like a lot of people with depression. And she says, "Will my kids be okay?" Kind of letting her know she's thinking like she's ready. And she kind of opens up this lighter, puts it across the pictures, and shows like the two kids. One of them becomes a doctor, one of them gets married and everything, goes through college and all that. So this is the villain, the woman in the yard, the villain, trying to get her to end it under the false pretense that her kids will be fine without any of their parents. And I can see this as I can see the woman in the yard as a manifestation of depression. She is the villain of this film. This is a horror movie. And I don't exactly agree with anybody saying that she isn't. Like, it's a bad thing that this character is being drawn to this. So she goes outside and says goodbye to her kids one last time, tells them to go to the one ranch, goes back inside to the attic, sits in the same chair the woman in the yard was in, puts the gun the woman in the yard is forcing her to pick up the gun, well, to put it on the ground, put it up to her head and shoot herself. And then we cut away for a little bit. And then we see her come out of the shed and then greet her kids. Her kids look happy. The lights are on in the house. The power's back. The dog is back. And they go inside, and then the camera zooms in on this painting because we know Ramona is a painter. And you see that her name is written completely backwards. So here's a bit of an issue with this. Some people this seems to be an already like Mandela effect thing. There are people who are saying that when they watched the film, they only saw the R backwards, insinuating that it is the real world, but the daughter drew the R backwards. And then there's other versions apparently, which is what I saw, that the entire name was backwards, insinuating that this is her in the afterlife with her kids again, insinuating that she also killed them, which we see flashes of throughout the film, like this bit where she's her the son is bouncing this ball on the wall and she's like slowly going for a knife, and then she ends up throwing the ball outside, and then she like was yelling at the daughter like, get it right, draw the R right, you keep drawing it backwards. But that's the thing, that is either the real world melding with this fake world that the woman in the yard is trying to put in her head, or the daughter the mother is just overwhelmed, which is made very apparent. She's an overwhelmed parent. A lot of this reminded me of my mom, but I never felt like they were trying to portray her as abusive because of her depression. Many parents get angry. Parents sometimes throw things. Is that okay? No. I think what this film was going for was that she was refusing help, and that's what she really needed. she needed help so she could be there for her kids. And this ending, I think, is genuinely supposed to be off-putting on purpose. Because the insinuation is that the woman in the yard is, again, her grief or her depression manifesting as a human. And she's kind of just the tipping point for Ramona. I almost said Danielle. Because Ramona is a very grief-stricken, very depressed woman. And I can kind of see that. I can understand that. And yes, it makes for a very bleak ending if you take that to heart. Some people see this ending as, well, I guess the ending where it's just the backwards R is that she overcame her depression and her smiling right as she was about to shoot herself was her realizing um, that this isn't right. Realizing that she overcame her demons because you can actively see her struggling to push herself to do it, and then the woman in black, or the woman, I keep saying the woman in black, the woman in the yard kind of melds into her and forces her to go through with it. But that's the thing. I feel like in order to tell the story, you have to be ready to have people be against your version of events. Because, yes, is this ending depressing as all hell? Yes. Do I think that How I Met Call It Sarah or any of the writers or producers or anything are saying that suicide is okay? No. I don't get that from this. I don't understand how anybody can get that from this. I can understand people not enjoying the film. That's fine. Psychological thrillers and horror films are not for everybody, especially this type of horror film that is incredibly bleak, that is incredibly, well, again, grief-based horror movies, which, again, I will admit, are getting old. But I don't think this film is bad. I really enjoyed it. Is it a 10 out of 10? No. It's a 9 for me. My main issue with this film is the pacing at times near the second act is a little bit wobbly, and some characters' actions seem a little bit off. Other than that, this is a very intense horror film that I think is very effective in what it's trying to do. I think it has a good message in, and I know some people might be like, there's no message. At the in the credits, I know they kind of do the 13 Reasons Why thing where they heard that kids were killing themselves after the Hannah Baker episode. And then again after the Tyler episode. I won't give away anymore, but some people could see that as damage control, as them thinking forward and being like, oh, maybe some people won't like this portrayal, so we might make it clear. Even without that, I never really got that they were trying to be, it never felt to me that they were trying to be offensive with this, or that they were laughing in the face of people who were suicidal or depressed. And I just don't get that opinion. I don't understand it. Maybe I never will. But yeah. Um I I really don't know a lot of what else I can say about this. I All I can say is I enjoyed it. I think it works as a creepy horror movie, and it also works as kind of a call to action. And I think it can be very eye-opening for people who are suicidal or depressed to see this film and see that not only could they be affecting themselves, they could be affecting other people. And I would hope that people would take steps to not have to go through what this character goes through. Because yeah, I again, I think How I May Call It Sarah did a wonderful job with directing. I think by the score was really gorgeous and haunting. I I I should have had that ready. Lauren Balfe. Okay. He's done a lot of stuff. He also did the score for Carry On. He did a lot of the a few Mission Impossible scores. He did Argyle. Um yeah, definitely a very talented composer. Um again, the camera work, gorgeous, the editing, great. There's not a lot I can really get mad at here. And yeah, I I hope that at least my well, I mean, I'll still be making a short review of this without spoilers. I hope that my recommendation will open more people up to this because a lot of people see Blumhouse and they immediately think, this sucks." And yeah, I hope that they will enjoy this and at least take away what I took away from it. But yeah, that's my review of The Woman in the Yard. If you've seen the film, let me know what your thoughts are in the comments down below. If you have any recommendations, put them down there as well. And movie reviewer next door.